What if I told you that the unmistakable signs of divine favor are not hidden in the clouds, but in your thoughts, your actions, and the results you create? The moment God begins to bless you, four signs emerge like a sunrise after darkness, and when you see them, you must act because they hold the power to reshape your destiny. There comes a time in every person's life when the tide turns not because of sheer effort alone, but because heaven itself begins to respond. This, my friends, is what I call the blessing phase. And when it begins, the signs are clear to the one who is ready to see them. Let me ask you, have you ever felt like everything you tried was a struggle, like you were pushing against a locked door with no key in sight? If that's you, don't despair, because when God decides it's your time, the lock doesn't just open, it vanishes. Now, why must you pay close attention to this message? Because recognizing the moment God blesses you is more important than asking for the blessing itself. If you miss the signs, you may delay your destiny. But if you catch them, if you seize them, you can ride that divine wave into your greatest season of life. First, you'll notice your mind begins to shift. Ideas, strategies, dreams, they begin flowing like a mighty river. You're no longer operating from confusion or doubt. You start waking up with purpose, and you go to bed with clarity. That's not coincidence. That's the first sign. Second, problems that once crushed you now shape you. That failed business, it teaches you. That betrayal, it strengthens your resolve. These are not setbacks. These are stepping stones. Third, people start showing up in your life like pieces of a divine puzzle. A stranger gives you advice that unlocks your next step. A long-lost friend returns with an opportunity. Don't call it luck, call it alignment. Fourth, and most powerfully, peace comes over you. Not the peace that comes from having everything, but the peace that lets you move even when everything is uncertain. That's spiritual power, not fearlessness, but faithfulness. When God blesses you, it's never just for your comfort, it's for your calling. So when you feel that shift, don't waste it. Step boldly, act deliberately, and share generously. Because the moment you recognize those four signs, your season has begun. When the blessing of God begins to move upon your life, the very first place it touches is not your wallet, your reputation, or even your circumstances. It touches your mind. Suddenly, the fog lifts. Where once you were plagued by doubt, confusion, or indecision, you now find yourself brimming with clarity, energy, and insight. New ideas begin to flow into your consciousness, not as random musings, but as purposeful and persistent thoughts that seem to demand action. These are not ordinary ideas. They are ideas charged with life. They carry a sense of urgency, of destiny, of divine timing. You can no longer ignore them because they resonate so deeply that they pull at your spirit like a magnet. For example, consider the story of a man who, for years, struggled to build a business. Every plan he devised seemed to fall apart. He read the books, attended the seminars, made the calls, but nothing stuck. Then, in a quiet moment of reflection, after praying for clarity, an idea came to him, seemingly out of nowhere. It wasn't dramatic. It was simple, almost too obvious, but it felt different. It lit up every part of his thinking. He couldn't shake it. He sketched it out, refined it, pursued it, and within months, doors began opening, resources flowed in, and his business took off. That idea was a divine seed, an inspired thought that could only come when his mind aligned with a higher source. When God blesses you, inspiration isn't something you have to chase. It starts to chase you. You'll find yourself in conversations where a passing comment sparks a powerful concept. You'll be reading a book and a single sentence will leap off the page and wrap itself around your soul. Or perhaps you'll wake up in the middle of the night with a vision so vivid, so real, that you have to get up and write it down. This is not your imagination running wild. This is heaven planting blueprints in the soil of your mind. It's the universe handing you the raw material of your future, one thought at a time. And these thoughts do not leave you idle. They stir you to act. They push you to plan, to execute, to take risks you wouldn't have dared to take before. They do not flatter your ego, they stretch your spirit. They are often accompanied by a sense of responsibility, as if you've been entrusted with something precious, something sacred. And that is exactly what it is, a divine download meant only for you, tailored to your journey, your gifts, and your purpose. One of the clearest signs that you are walking in divine favor is when the very things that once held you back begin to push you forward. When God blesses you, your perception shifts so dramatically that what used to seem like a barrier now looks like a doorway. You begin to understand that life's resistance is not here to destroy you, it is here to direct you. The obstacles do not disappear, but they change in meaning and function. They no longer feel like punishment, they become preparation. Suddenly, adversity becomes your teacher. Setbacks become your training ground. Pain becomes your propulsion. You no longer curse the struggle, you start to extract wisdom from it, and that shift in mindset becomes a supernatural catalyst for progress. Imagine a young woman who dreamed of becoming a public speaker, yet she was born with a pronounced stutter. For years, she hid in the background, avoiding attention, avoiding expression, because every attempt to speak brought shame and ridicule. Her stutter was her wall, immovable, permanent, and humiliating. But something changed when she began to embrace her spiritual walk. She stopped seeing her speech challenge as a punishment and began to ask, what if this is part of the message I meant to carry? Instead of fighting to erase her flaw, she started sharing her journey courageously, imperfectly. To her surprise, people weren't laughing, they were listening. They were moved by her vulnerability, by her courage. The very thing that had caused her the most pain became the very reason people trusted her, respected her, and were inspired by her. That obstacle did not just transform, it became the platform upon which her purpose stood. This transformation is not something that happens by accident. It happens when your mind and spirit are aligned with a higher power that allows you to see through the lens of growth. A job loss, once terrifying, becomes the break you needed to finally pursue your calling. A betrayal that left you heartbroken becomes the moment you discover your worth and rebuild with stronger boundaries. A rejection that stung deeply becomes the redirection that placed you on the exact path where your gifts could flourish. You start to see how even the darkest valleys were necessary to prepare you for the mountaintop. You look back and realize that the pain didn't stop you, it strengthened you. It clarified what matters. It refined what you believed about yourself. And most importantly, it revealed what God believed about you all along. When you are walking in the blessing, you stop asking why this is happening to you and start asking what it's preparing you for. This change in perspective does not remove the struggle, but it empowers you to move through it with purpose. You begin to recognize that resistance is a signal, not a stop sign. It is the force that sharpens your discipline, expands your resilience, and draws out strength you didn't know you had. Even failure, when placed in the hands of divine intention, becomes fuel. Every closed door becomes proof that a better one is opening. Every delay becomes a divine pause that saves you from something you could not see. And in time, you begin to realize those obstacles weren't in the way, they were the way. When divine favor begins to flow in your life, one of the most powerful and undeniable signs is the sudden appearance of the right people at the right time. You don't have to chase them. You don't have to beg for their attention or manipulate situations to make them stay. They arrive naturally, often unexpectedly, with precisely the skill, wisdom, encouragement, or opportunity you need to take the next step in your journey. It feels almost too perfect to be coincidence, and that's because it isn't. It's orchestration. When God blesses you, your path becomes magnetized not just to ideas and inspiration, but to people whose presence accelerates your purpose. These are destiny aligners, not time wasters. Their arrival is timely, and their impact is often transformative. Picture a man who spent years trying to launch a creative project. He had the vision, the passion, and the discipline, but lacked the technical expertise and industry knowledge to bring it to life. Every time he tried to do it alone, he hit a wall. Frustrated but persistent, he finally reached a point where he surrendered the outcome and prayed not just for progress, but for partnership. Weeks later, while sitting in a quiet cafe, he struck up a conversation with a stranger at the next table. That stranger turned out to be a veteran in the exact field he was struggling with, someone who not only understood the terrain, but was looking to mentor someone with vision. That single encounter opened doors, resources, and relationships that had been out of reach for years. It wasn't just a lucky meeting, it was a divine connection, the kind that only shows up when you're aligned with a higher calling. These people don't always look the way you expect. Sometimes they enter your life dressed as a friend, a coach, a teacher, or even a critic. They might challenge you, stretch you, or call you to a higher standard. But their influence is unmistakable. They push you forward, not pull you back. They open your eyes to possibilities you didn't see. They affirm the greatness in you even when you've forgotten it yourself. And what's more, the conversations with them feel charged, meaningful, and aligned. There's a flow, a chemistry, a shared sense of purpose that makes even brief interactions feel weighty. It's as if they were assigned to your life, not simply added to it. And just as new people appear, old ones may fade away. This too is part of the blessing. You may find that certain relationships, once central, begin to feel out of place. Misalignment reveals itself. Some people may distance themselves, not because of conflict, but because the season has changed. It's not rejection, it's release. And as space is cleared, room is made for those who carry what you need and who need what you carry. These divine appointments are not accidents. They are proof that when the timing is right, God will never let you walk alone. You will be supported, sharpened, and sometimes even carried by those who were sent not by man's arrangement, but by heaven's design. One of the most profound and unmistakable signs that you are walking in the blessing of God is the emergence of an unshakable calm that takes root within you. It is not the kind of calm that comes from having all the answers or from a life free of problems. It is a deeper peace, quiet, powerful, and resilient. It arrives in your spirit like a whisper, yet it grounds you like an anchor. Worry, which once controlled your thoughts and dictated your decisions, begins to lose its grip. You no longer spiral into panic when things don't go according to plan. Instead, you begin to operate from a place of inner assurance, a spiritual confidence that says, I may not know how, but I know who. This calm is not passive. It is not indifference. It is the result of alignment of knowing you are divinely guided, even in the midst of uncertainty. Think of a woman who, for years, wrestled with anxiety over her finances. Every month brought a new set of fears, unpaid bills, looming debt, and the pressure of providing for her children. She worked tirelessly, yet never felt secure. Her nights were restless, her prayers desperate. Then something shifted, not in her bank account, but in her mindset. After a season of spiritual seeking, she began to lean into faith instead of fear. She meditated on promises, surrounded herself with words of truth, and started to give thanks before the breakthrough came. Slowly, a stillness settled over her. The bills didn't vanish overnight, but her fear did. She stopped obsessing over the unknown and started trusting in provision. Oddly enough, the more peace she carried, the more solutions began to appear. Extra work opportunities surfaced. Unexpected support arrived. And even when things were tight, she didn't panic. That calm didn't just help her survive, it shifted the entire atmosphere of her household. Her children felt it. Her decisions reflected it. Her life began to move in rhythm with peace instead of panic. This calm is not based on circumstances, it is rooted in revelation. It comes when you realize that you are no longer walking alone. It grows stronger each time you choose faith over fear, trust over turmoil. You may still have questions, but you no longer feel frantic. Deadlines may loom, challenges may persist, but something in you knows that everything is under control, even if you aren't the one in control. And this peace changes how you carry yourself. You respond instead of react. You pause instead of panic. You pray from a place of trust, not desperation. This kind of inner stillness cannot be faked. It must be forged in the furnace of surrender. It becomes your compass, your protection, your signal that something higher is working behind the scenes. You stop needing constant proof that things will work out because you've settled into the truth that you are already being taken care of. There is a moment in your journey when the energy of striving begins to dissolve and is replaced with a sense of divine momentum. This is not laziness or passivity, it is a shift from forcing outcomes to flowing with them. When God begins to bless your path, doors that were once sealed shut begin to swing open without the need for manipulation, stress, or relentless exertion. What once required 100 emails, countless meetings, and endless frustration suddenly comes together in a single, effortless conversation. This is not because you've stopped working, but because your work is now aligned with divine timing. Favor steps in where force used to be. You stop trying to convince people and they start seeking you out. The things you used to chase now begin to chase you, and progress no longer feels like a grind, it feels like grace in motion. Consider the story of a musician who had spent years trying to get his songs heard. He sent demo after demo to record labels, played in empty venues, and promoted himself tirelessly, only to be met with silence and rejection. He reached a point of exhaustion, not from lack of passion, but from the weight of forcing doors that refused to open. After a season of introspection, he stopped chasing approval and began focusing on creating music that was honest, that came from his soul rather than strategy. One day, without any major promotion, a video he recorded in his living room was shared by a popular influencer. Within days, his music spread like wildfire. Industry professionals reached out to him. Invitations rolled in, and the very doors that had denied him access for years now welcomed him without hesitation. The key wasn't a change in effort, it was a change in alignment. He no longer had to knock on doors that were never his to open. The right door recognized him and opened on its own. This phenomenon often defies logic. It's the job you weren't qualified for on paper, but were offered because of a single conversation. It's the business deal that came together faster than anything you meticulously planned. It's the opportunity that lands in your lap without you networking, pitching, or chasing it. These aren't just lucky breaks, they're signs that you've stepped into the flow of divine orchestration. Things begin to happen suddenly, but in truth, they're the delayed result of preparation finally meeting the right moment. It doesn't mean life becomes effortless, but your efforts are now infused with ease. You feel carried, not dragged. You feel led, not lost. You do less begging and more receiving. You don't have to hustle your way into every room. You're invited, welcomed, and sometimes even expected. This is the season when your presence precedes you and your name is spoken in rooms you haven't yet entered, and the doors that once resisted your knock begin to open with ease, not because of who you know, but because of who knows you. When the blessing of God truly takes root in your life, something profound begins to happen within your heart. You start to look outward instead of inward. The focus shifts from what you can get to what you can give. The hunger for personal success is still there, but it is now tempered and elevated by a deeper desire to become a vessel through which others are lifted. You are no longer satisfied with just accumulating wealth, knowledge, influence, or wisdom for yourself. You feel compelled, almost burdened with the need to share it, to pour into others, to help them rise just as you have risen. And this desire is not born from guilt or obligation. It flows from gratitude. You recognize that what you've received wasn't earned by merit alone. It was grace. And grace, when truly received, demands to be passed on. Take the story of a once struggling entrepreneur who, after years of failure and frustration, finally broke through. His business began to thrive, his income multiplied, and his name grew in recognition. At first, he celebrated the fruits of his success quietly, but over time, a restlessness developed in him, a sense that his success would be empty if it ended with him. He began mentoring young entrepreneurs, not for profit, but because he saw in them the same fire and the same confusion he once had. She started hosting free workshops, investing in small businesses, and creating spaces where others could learn, grow, and rise. And here's the irony. The more he gave, the more he received. His business expanded further. His influence deepened. But even more than that, he felt alive because his blessing had found its purpose in blessing others. This desire to give becomes natural when you realize that your increase was never meant to end with you. You start to see the needs of others more clearly. You become sensitive to pain, to potential, to people who are where you used to be. You recognize in their struggle the reflection of your past, and instead of judging them, you reach out your hand. You share what you know, you sow what you have, and you speak what they need to hear, not for applause, but because you remember what it felt like to walk through the storm alone. And now that you've been brought through, you can't help but light the path for someone else. This compulsion to bless others doesn't always manifest in grand gestures. Sometimes it's a quiet phone call of encouragement. Sometimes it's financial support given anonymously. Sometimes it's mentoring, listening, or simply being present. But whatever form it takes, it comes from the overflow. You begin to live not from scarcity, but from abundance. You don't fear that giving will drain you. You know that it will expand you. And in this space, your life becomes more than a success story. It becomes a testimony. One that reminds others that when God blesses a person, he doesn't just bless their hands, he blesses their heart. And when that happens, the ripple effect cannot be stopped.